Hi, we hit 10k subs. This is a special video. It's a big thank you to everyone who supports me and enjoys my ramblings. Now here's more of that. Thank you so much and I love you. Bye! The time has come. You've gotten a group of friends, a table, dice, books, an actual schedule. You finally get to play D&D. Your character is ready to go. You've got the name, the equipment, the spells, the stats, and even some cool art. But what's that on the second page? A backstory? Why do I have to fill that out? You don't need a backstory to play this game, so it's not important, right? Before we go further, a quick video disclaimer. I have never done something like this before. This kind of analysis, video essay stuff, it's not really my thing, but I want to try something new. So don't expect a tidy academic summary on backstories and RPG gaming concepts, but more of fast and loose ramblings about a hobby I love and the people who love it as well. I am experienced in D&D. I've been playing it since I was 12, 14? But I also know there are others who have been playing this game as far back as 3.5 or 3rd edition, with far more people than I've ever met, probably. So take everything from here on out with a grain of salt. With that out of the way, let's begin. Dungeons & Dragons is a role-playing game.
Well, no shit.
For some people, their favorite part of this kind of game is the cool stuff you can do. Throwing fireballs and uppercutting dragons and using a big sword to do big damage against big monster. Now that's all a lot of fun, of course, but the focus of the game, in my opinion, is always on the characters. Whether you're playing a war game with non-stop combat or a mystery where hardly anyone so much as lifts a sword, it's always been a game about shared storytelling. I think most people agree with that. In this story, unfolding at your own kitchen table, the PCs are the protagonists, the DM playing the role of antagonist, side and background characters, and everything else. There's also the setting, which can sometimes be a character itself, and I mean that both in the literary sense as well as a literal sense. Just play a game set in the Feywild if you want to know what I'm talking about. The people playing the game are the stars of the show. The emotional ups and downs, the monsters slain, and dungeons conquered! Through trials and tribulations, do each of you become heroes. Or villains, if you're running an evil campaign. The NPCs are no less important, of course. Your DM has to fill in all the other characters, from the humble tavern keeper to the Grand King to that one shopkeeper who is now doubling his prices because you rolled a 1 for your persuasion. It's okay, we'll rob him later. The people playing this game want to know who they are. That goes for the players as well. People want to know about your character. Who are they? Where do they come from? Do they have any family? What did they do before they became an adventurer?
Would you display this as a trophy? Do you have a pet? Do you have a sweet tooth? Do you believe in the power of a curse?
Have you had your hearing tested lately?
Planning a trip soon? Can you remember the tallest man you've ever seen?
Do you love to go a-wandering beneath a clear blue sky?
Why become an adventurer at all? I mean, have you seen what we have to do? We're fighting mind flayers, dude. This shit is dangerous. Nobody normal does this for no reason. All of these things are put into the backstory. PCs in this game don't just appear out of thin air ready to take on a dungeon. No, they were somebody once. Your characters came from somewhere after all. They grew up somewhere, they had a family, probably, friends. They found a way to survive and cultivated skills and talents. They learned and grew up. At least I assume they did. I've yet to join a game of D&D where somebody played as a literal toddler. No, something led your character to this tavern, to meet with these other strange individuals, and to take on the difficult and dangerous life of adventuring. D&D defines a backstory as, quote, detailed personal history of a character created for a Dungeons & Dragons game, outlining their origin, family, life experiences, motivations, and key events that shaped them into the person they are when the campaign begins, essentially explaining why they are adventuring and what drives them to participate in the story. Now this makes it seem like a backstory is not only important, but necessary to even play the game. I want you to think about that. We'll come back to that later. Characters in games like D&D, and in the majority of fiction, are inexorably tied to their origins. A character's past defines who they are in the present, at least in part. For some people, constructing an origin for their character is simple. Games like D&D and Starfinder are fictional games of imagination, so why not just make shit up? I'm playing Johnny Swinger. He's a human fighter and all-around cool dude who's really into swords and likes to get paid to hit things with his swords. Boom, done. One character ready to go. Some players choose to come to the backstory later, either by asking their DM to write one for them, or giving their characters amnesia. That's a classic. Answering every inquiry of their past with, I don't know, or I can't remember, or it doesn't matter. But even then, those characters are still tethered to their backstories in a way. Characters with amnesia usually start out as desperately trying to uncover their lost memories. Learning about their past is their driving force at the start of the game. As for the players who ask the DM to write their backstory for them, please don't do that. We have enough on our plates already. Let me help you construct one. Let me give you some ideas that you can work with. Have another player help you. Take a backstory off the internet. It's also just more fun to have a backstory. It's a tool that both players and DMs can use to spice up the game. Remember that first time your DM introduced the villain that killed the rogue's parents? Or when the druid was reunited with her long-lost mother? Moments like that are the highs that people who play games like this are constantly chasing, because it's so much fun! And these moments would never have happened if you didn't have some kind of backstory for your character. So, characters are tied to their origins. There is no Spider-Man without Uncle Ben. There is no Superman without Krypton blowing up. But for this video, I'll give a more in-depth example, using a beloved character from the D&D franchise, Drizzt Do'Urden. By the way, spoilers for the books, of course. I'll be getting all my information from the wiki and the book series The Legend of Drizzt by R.A. Salvatore. I highly recommend these books for fans of fantasy in general. Also, if I pronounce his name wrong, which I probably will, I apologize. It suffers the fantasy name curse of being pronounced one way when my brain reads it a different way. Now that I've placated the nerds in the comments waiting to tell me how horrible I am for pronouncing a made-up guy's name incorrectly, let's explore Drizzt's backstory and see how it defines his character. Drizzt Do'Urden is a drow, a dark elf, a member of a species of subterranean elves who are infamous across the Forgotten Realms, known for being a wicked and heartless people who sneak into towns in the dead of night to kidnap and murder. They spread fear, for everyone knows if you are taken as a victim of the drow, you will be sent to their underground cities to be used as slaves and sacrifices to their vile spider goddess. Those few that have escaped the drow speak of how the dark elves seem to enjoy the suffering and terror they inflict, a truly cruel race. And in the book Homeland, we see this cruelty firsthand through Drizzt's own eyes. The drow, as they were in the 2014 Forgotten Realms lore, are a religious oligarchy ruled entirely by its women. Their whole society is dedicated to the worship and teachings of their patron goddess, Lolth, the Spider Queen. A goddess known for being cunning, ruthless, and spiteful to a degree so extreme it would be comical if it wasn't so terrifying. The rulers of drow society are the clerics of Lolth, known as the matron mothers. Beneath them are their daughters, and beneath them are the males, with the eldest male being a bit more respectable than those younger, but they're all generally second-class citizens. Drizzt himself was born in the drow capital of Menzoberranzan, as the third son to one of these high-ranking clerics of Lolth, Matron Mother Malice. Yes, that's actually her name. Hey, at least she's honest with how blatantly evil she's going to be. This is extremely unlucky for baby Drizzt, because in the mandate of Lolth and Menzoberranzan, the third son of each family must be sacrificed. However, before the unthinkable happens, it's discovered that one of Drizzt's older brothers was killed in a fight with another influential drow family, making the young Drizzt the second son. So his life is spared on a technicality. Malice is a terrible mother. Shocker, I know. She never gives Drizzt any love or affection, but always dangling those things in front of him to keep him going. She keeps those beneath her in line with threats of death and torture, but it's not entirely equal. Remember, these are drow, and drow women get treated infinitely better than the men. Malice's daughters may be given a scare or a stern warning for speaking out of turn, but whenever Drizzt, his brothers, or the other men of the house step out of line, the punishments are swift and severe. Multiple times, Drizzt is flogged with a magical whip that makes his whole body feel like it's on fire. His sisters constantly threaten to murder him or hire assassins to kill him in his sleep if he doesn't learn his place. One of them even threatens to turn him into a Drider, an insane half-elf, half-spider monster if he doesn't do as she says without question. Eventually, he's sent to a school called the Academy of Melee Magver, a kind of finishing school that teaches drow men everything they need to know, or rather, are supposed to know, to function in this society. Throughout the first two of Salvatore's books, Drizzt learns more and more of his people's ways. He's told that the sun is a blazing ball of fire that will kill him if he goes to the surface during the day. He's told that all other elves are wicked liars and vile murderers who unjustly drove his people underground. He is taught that Lolth is the one true goddess and all others are thieves and pretenders jealous of her. He's told that honor and trust are synonyms for stupid, and that no enemy, no matter how pathetic, are deserving of mercy. That it is Lolth's will that all males are to be subservient to the drow females, and disobeying this creed would surely result in death. By all accounts, Drizzt should have turned out like any other drow, cruel and wicked, caring only for himself. But that's not the case. Drizzt is constantly questioning everything he sees and does. He wonders if the elves of the surface truly did drive his people underground, and if they are all as horrid and wretched as they say. He wonders why he has to cheat and lie to get ahead, and he can't fathom why others would do this to him. He wonders if Lolth is even real, and if she was as powerful as his teachers claimed. Every time he comes around to the typical dark elf way of doing things, he feels sick to his stomach. He's shown to have a noble spirit, constantly fighting back against a world that's actively trying to grind that nobility out of him. There is one outlet for our dark elf hero, another drow male by the name of Zaknafane, or Zak for short. Zak is the master at arms for Matron Malice, her greatest warrior, and the one who is in charge of Drizzt's training and education before he was sent off to Melee Magver. Zak is hard on Drizzt. But unlike the rest of his family, Zak's tough love is actual love. He cares about Drizzt, actually listens to him, teaches him what he needs to know to survive not just a battle, but the politics of drow society. He urges Drizzt to think creatively in a fight, insisting that a great warrior is one who improvises, not cheats. That if he gets strong enough with a sword, he won't need to resort to the dirty tricks and backstabbing he so despises. When Drizzt is old enough to be sent off to the academy, Zak begs Matron Malice not to send him off, worried that the school would shatter his noble spirit. When Drizzt returns, he tells his mentor that he killed a surface elf in a raid. Any other drow would have praised Drizzt for this act, but instead, Zak gets angry, ridiculing Drizzt for the senseless act of violence, even seriously considering killing the boy. We find out later that this is because Zak is Drizzt's biological father, and is doing his best to protect his son from the horrors of drow life. He even goes as far as to make the ultimate sacrifice for the sake of his son. In the book Exile, Drizzt straight up runs away from home. He's had enough of the threats, the abuse, the constant fear that at any moment he could be sacrificed to a cruel and uncaring spider god. Instead, he risks the dangers of the Underdark. The Underdark is a very, very dangerous place, and I am underselling it here. It's dark, of course. The only sources of light are glowing fungi, lava rivers, and the bioluminescence of subterranean predators, each of which would happily tear Drizzt apart and eat him given the chance. It is a land that's constantly shifting due to earthquakes and burrowing monsters digging fresh tunnels every day. There's quicksand, cave-ins, sinkholes, poison all around. It's just awful. It's a horrible place. Very inhospitable. On occasion, he comes across other intelligent races, like the Myconids and the Deep Gnomes, but they either attack him or run from him on sight, because, well, nobody likes the Dark Elves. For good reason. They are a people constantly murdering and enslaving literally everyone. So now, Drizzt is alone, in one of the worst places to be alone on the planet. I mean, he has his pet murder kitty Guinevere with him, but we'll save her for another video. To survive, Drizzt taps into this innate, brutalist survival instinct. He stops speaking, as any noise could attract the monsters, or worse, his mother's agents. He attacks prey swiftly and without mercy. At one point, he even calls himself no better than a beast, one that lashes out at the slightest perceived threat, and never pauses to think or converse. Then one day, while out hunting, Drizzt comes across several deep gnomes mining gems from the rock. Recognizing one of the gnomes as someone he saved during a raid before he left Menzoberranzan. This gnome is called Belwar, and while Drizzt was able to save his life by convincing the other Dark Elf raiders to let him go, Drizzt's jealous older brother cut the gnome's hands off to send a message. And Drizzt never stopped blaming himself for that. Out of guilt and a deep-rooted desire to socialize again, he follows Belwar into the gnome city and turns himself in. And it actually works. He ends up becoming friends with Belwar and a bunch of the other gnomes, and he gets to learn stuff he was never taught, mostly how he's been gaslit by his entire society for his whole life. Ultimately, Drizzt realizes that he can't live in the Underdark. His family will always be hunting him, and the only place his mother and sisters won't openly venture is the surface. And so, Drizzt leaves his homeland, and the only true friend he had ever known, and goes to an entirely different world, alien to him, to live out the rest of his adventures. Sorry if I missed a lot of Drizzt's backstory. There were several details that I just didn't have time for. It's a large book, and there's a lot of them. Again, highly recommend checking them out for yourself. Anyway, this backstory tells you a lot about Drizzt. We know that he's a dark elf raised by other dark elves in the Underdark. We know that the world and most of the people around him were hostile to him from his literal first breath. He's super skilled with a sword, a battle-tested warrior, he's a survivor, a social outcast, a noble wandering warrior always seeking to do what he feels is right. He's also probably being hunted by his very scary family, and anyone else who hates the Drow, which is a lot of people. A lot of people do not like the Drow. Drizzt wouldn't be a fan favorite if his backstory wasn't so gripping and informative. I've seen a ton of videos and Reddit posts and Twitter threads claiming that a backstory isn't even necessary to play D&D, you don't need it, and they are absolutely 100% correct about that. It's not necessary. D&D is a game, it's meant to be fun, and nobody expects you to write a novel for your character if that isn't your idea of fun. Also, most DMs don't want a novel for your backstory. Seriously, too much on our plate. We're not reading that. Good rule of thumb, keep it to 1 page or less. Or just ask your DM. You know what? Just ask your DM. Ask your DM how long or short they want a backstory to be. However, for every video on why backstories aren't necessary, there's also a dozen on how to make a good one. This leaves me to believe that most people who engage with D&D do think that a backstory is something that should influence how you play the character and vice versa. That it's not necessary in the slightest, but it is important. Or at least it should feel important. You want your character to feel like a part of this world, and giving them a bit of history, no matter how long or short, helps with that. So talk to your DM, because at the end of the day, this is a game about shared storytelling, and the story is shared between you and your friends. And we are all looking forward to getting to know you and your characters a lot better. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Whew, 10 1,000 subscribers. We did it. I honestly never thought we would make it this far. Thank you all so much. You have no idea how happy this makes me. And a big thank you to my patrons as well for supporting me on Patreon. You guys keep the lights in my house on. You can become a patron too. You get to see early ad-free access videos. You get the monthly monsters package where I make a homebrew monster complete with stats, lore, battle tactics, treasure, all of that stuff. And you can cancel at any time. Watch other videos on the channel, leave a like and subscribe if you'd be so kind, and maybe leave a comment about your opinion on Backstories. And with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!